Uber says it's out of here, stopping service in Broward because it says regulations there are too strict.
It is an Uber issue of our time, balancing public transport and safety standards. And it is the topic of today.
The Confederate battle flag comes down in South Carolina. Is this progress or political correctness? We will take that question to the roundtable.
And oh, so much more. Great to have you with us today. Good morning. Transportation, how to get from here to there, is becoming one of the most pressing issues in South Florida. And
one solution is ride-sharing companies like Uber. But this week, Uber threatened to pull out of Broward County. The ride-sharing service has caught on in South Florida like wildfire, and most other places in the country as well and abroad. It's very popular with people who have had their fill of dirty taxis and discourteous drivers.
Now taxi drivers and owners are fighting back, accusing services like Uber and Lyft of flouting the rules involving background checks, insurance, licensing, and permits.
This week, Uber objected and told Broward County, enough. The company says it will stop its service in Broward July 31st. Well, is this a real threat or just a negotiating ploy? Tim Ryan is the mayor of Broward County. He said he was, quote, surprised and disappointed by Uber's announcement. The mayor also says the rules the county has put in place are simple and reasonable consumer protections. Dan Lindblade is the president and CEO of the Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. He and the chamber support ride-sharing services in Broward.
Also with us today, Diego Feliciano, who is president of the South Florida Taxi Cab Association, which is based in Miami. His members want ride-sharing services to play by all the same rules imposed on the taxi industry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to have you come in. Mayor Ryan, let's begin, I think, with a question I posed there a minute ago. Is this threat from Uber real, or is just a negotiating ploy to try to get you to amend the ordinance that you and the commission passed?
Well, I've heard both sides on that issue. Certainly Uber and Lyft, they provide a very good service that a lot of people in Broward County want, and we hope that they'll stay in Broward County. But just because you offer a service that is popular doesn't mean that you can operate without any oversight, especially as to public safety. I think at the end, this threat to move out is actually an effort to persuade elected officials in Palm Beach County and in Miami-Dade County to go forward with less stringent regulations.
Dan Lindblade, it's worth it to say, to your point, Michael, we did invite representatives from Uber to be here today, and we're not able to get them to come in.
If I may say, we made phone calls. I called headquarters in San Francisco and said, please send somebody. Nobody ever called me back, and so we are without an Uber representative, but maybe this would be the moment to sort of put up on the screen what Uber said when it made this announcement. If we could get that, it said the Broward County Commission has created one of the most hostile regulatory frameworks in the nation, raising substantial barriers for local entrepreneurs trying to earn a living. It is impossible for Uber to continue providing the high standards of service and affordability the community has come to expect and demand. We hope the Board of County Commissioners will revisit the issue. And Lyft has issued a statement as well, similar, but not saying they will pull out.
Yeah. Dan Lindblade, you are here representing Fort Lauderdale's business community. You can extrapolate that into the business community as a whole, and we appreciate you being here. What is so onerous about regulations?
Well, first off, I want to say that this guy is a good friend of mine, the mayor of the great county of Broward, and we've done a lot of good work together. And I have to say that I disagree with what the mayor is saying as this being a political ploy to put pressure on Palm Beach County and Dade County. I've said early on when I testified before the commission, and the mayor will remember this, I said, we have to find common ground on this. We can't treat the ride sharing as a taxi cab company, and that's what we're doing. We're actually going beyond what the current regulations or the previous regulations were in adding layers and layers of regulations and fines on the ride sharing network. And finally, I'll say, I signed up for Uber before the regs were put in place to be a driver. There's no way I would be a part-time driver and go through that process. So there has to be
lengthy and complicated.
A lot of different hoops you got to jump through. It just won't do it.
Yeah. All right, Diego Feliciano, this is your life, I mean, the taxi cab industry. Do you think that what Uber and Lyft are trying to do in Broward and Miami-Dade and across the country is to escape the kind of regulations that the taxi industry must obey?
Absolutely so, but not the taxi industry so much as the riding public. I can't tell you how many times I've sat at the county commission, Dade County, hoping they wouldn't pass something else in the benefit of the public, and gotten hammered again. The most recent one was that we're ADA compliant, and we have to have wheelchair taxis, and we have to have certain taxis that the drivers know how to put somebody in and out of it, and other technologies that come on that we sort of pushed into. The issue comes to the definition of a street hail or dispatching, which is as old as horse carriages. If you're driving from point A to
corner, whether you know you're on Flagler Street in downtown Miami or Las Olas Boulevard, and you just stand there on the and wave down a taxi, you can't wave down Uber. I mean, you go to your app. I mean, as Dan says, I mean, I've used it. I know Glenna has used it. Tim, have you used it? Have you ever?
Yes, I have.
You have? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, a little confusion there. There's very little street hail business in Florida. We're not like New York. But what I was getting at was that street hailing is the oldest form of transporting somebody from A to B. Before there was telephones, then there was radios. Now there's apps. Taxi cab companies have apps too. The point is that you're transporting somebody from A to B, and that why should you be any different than any other dispatch? The magic of Uber being an app is that there is no magic. They're just dispatching. So in order to dispatch 24 hours a day, since you're not aware whether your driver has some personals that he picks up on the street on a daily basis without the Uber app, which is already happening and reported across the United States, that's why he has to have 24/7 insurance that's commercial, because you don't have any control of that driver and who's he's picked up, at what time, where, or whether it was through the app or not.
But doesn't this go toward, Mayor, a buyer beware? If you have a set of businesses all in the same general industry offering services, and you have airport and seaport would be under governmental control. So that's kind of to Diego's point. This is a street hailing or app business. Isn't it a buyer beware kind of situation? And if the buyer's comfortable or not comfortable, can choose which service they provide.
There's two common situations where an Uber passenger would travel without going through the app. Diego mentioned the one about street hailing, but the other one is once there is a relationship between the driver and the passenger, then there's no need to go through the app. So this will be more common than expected, maybe as much as 15 or 20% of the rides. So that's a lot of people to have exposed without insurance. And that's one of the reasons for the 24/7. But there's ways to have 24/7 coverage. I mean, it's done in a lot of major cities, and Uber does not have a problem requiring the insurance coverage and requiring the level 2 federal background checks in New York City and in the Houston area, which is almost 6 million people, and also in Columbus, Ohio.
All right. Well, Dan Lindblade, let me ask you, here is, as I understand it, is what the Broward County Commission, you testified. Here's what they did. In April, they said, we are going to allow TNCs, transportation network companies, Uber, Lyft. The drivers have to be, well, they have to get a TNC license, I guess, from the county. Drivers must undergo this level 2 background check, which includes fingerprinting. They have to have proof of insurance. The vehicle has to be inspected. And a couple of other things. I mean, is any of that onerous? I mean, is it too much?
Well, for me, if I was going to be an Uber driver, yes. Uber drivers are mostly part-time people. Right. These aren't full-time taxi or limo drivers. These are folks who are doing it just to make a little more money. They're entrepreneurs. Right. They've caught on with this this craze of this app that's used, and they want to participate. Right. Well, you're going to see a drop-off right a bit.
On that score, excuse me, Glenna, let me jump in here. I think that one of the requirements, is it not, Mayor, is that there be a chauffeur, that they get a chauffeur's license. The objection from the people at Uber, as I understand it, is then the name becomes a matter of public record if you have a chauffeur's license. And most of these people are part-timers. I mean, they drive, but they don't do this as their sole means of employment.
Well, it's not a chauffeur's license. It's a chauffeur's registration, and it simply means that you go through that background check. The license is for the TNC or Transportation Network Company, and the permit is for the vehicle. The registration is for the chauffeur.
I see.
I'd like like to hear from Diego, if we could. Uber and Lyft and ride sharing works in so many other major cities. What is the difference in South Florida?
Well, I beg your pardon, but my internet is full of so many stories every single day about Uber and the atrocities that they're committing across the United States.
Atrocities?
Yes, and the lawsuits they have all over the country from the governments because, like, for example, Hillsboro's Public Safety Commission will be in court with them in a few weeks. Everybody just
Over
wants
what?
them
What's the
over
issue?
the safety of the public, of these the same rules that the mayor is trying to add to their system. The issue is that I have an issue with this thing, and I'm going to defend the mayor about an onerous ordinance. An onerous ordinance to me would be a cap on vehicles, because I got to compete with our taxis with unlimited vehicles, and a cap like Orlando has that they can't charge less than a taxi. That would have been my kind of ordinance. The ordinance that this mayor has passed is strictly for the benefit of the public. It's not for the taxi industry. It's not onerous. It is for the safety of the public. We live in a world right now where it's important to know who's in your vehicle driving you. And
Well, I don't know that Mayor Ryan or anybody on the commission has said it's not important to know who is driving you or to be sure that they are not somebody with a criminal record. But hold your thoughts. We're going to take a brief break and we'll come back, and Mr. Mayor will give you a chance to respond. Thank you.
Welcome back to what is an excellent discussion on ride-sharing services in South Florida and the debate over them. We're talking about the safety. Diego Feliciano with the Taxi Cab Association. During this break, we had a couple of people on Twitter who reached out to say that they choose rides that are simple, fast, and cheap, ride-sharing at base. One said they are choosing not to be abused by drivers. All of this and anecdotal stories about what happens in cabs or ride sharing, but it comes down to competition between who gets the ride. And there have been stories, you mentioned before, that you have horror stories about ride sharing services, but you hear anecdotally people are choosing to go ride sharing because of the experiences that they have in taxi cabs.
Look, there's one thing I've learned about Uber. Their control of the media, it's nothing that our taxi cab drivers are ever going to reach. They push a button, they can have 50 people call you if they want to right now, maybe 1,000. We've learned that. It even has bothered some commissioners in Dade and Broward.
Well, for the record, the tweets that we got were to our program from our viewers today.
Oh, okay, well, but maybe they're watching for this reason. But however, that being said, you cannot compete with a McDonald's in front of the Burger King if he doesn't have to buy food from the FDA that's certified meats and buy the same products you do. So what's fair is what's fair for both sides.
Right,
and in this view right now that we have, it's a totally on level playing field with the taxi cab industry. So I say either untie my hands, I want a price surge, I want to give cheap rides, I can do it. We have apps in our cabs. We can better our equipment if we don't have to pay $120 a week for insurance, And this is what's stopping us.
Let's talk a little bit about the insurance issue, because I think Mayor Ryan and Dan Lindblade, you had mentioned that at the hearing before the commission that a number of drivers don't object to the fingerprinting who were there at that commission meeting. But the insurance issue is different because they want to have individual auto insurance, but the idea of buying a commercial policy for somebody who does this part-time, that would be expensive, and they see that as onerous, don't they?
Of course, of course. That's one of the reasons that I won't be a driver. But the real deal is when an Uber driver has a fare, they're covered under the Uber insurance, which is 4 times what the state of Florida mandates. That $1 million coverage covers them. And where the mayor, I think, had some concerns was what he called at the time gaps in coverages, where they're in the middle of going to get a fare and they might get in an accident and cause some property damage. What insurance covers then? Is it the individual driver's insurance or is it Uber? So there has been some discussion about that with the company, and I think the dialogue was good. Unfortunately, with the hammering that the county did on this new ordinance, Uber has decided to leave.
You take an issue with the word hammering, it appears.
When Uber first began operating in Broward County in August, they came to the commissioners and they had 2 requests. They said, number one, do not regulate the number of drivers that we put on the road, and second, do not control our price. So after those two requests were allowed in the ordinance, then they began to continue to kind of move the line in the sand, and then the insurance issue became very important. But they can provide the insurance. They can provide the insurance at the time that the passenger first requests that the Uber driver come and pick up the ride. But they didn't want to. They didn't want to make an arrangement with large insurance companies, State Farm or Allstate or Progressive, because they were hoping that there was going to be a state fix, that the state was going to preempt or control the entire Uber regulation. When that didn't happen, now they're going back and they're looking at approaching these insurance companies. And as well they can, because a $50 billion company out of San Francisco has enough clout that they can get insurance companies to have a rider on an individual policy to allow for the Uber driving.
Right. Well, I think it goes without saying for anybody at home who is not familiar with how Uber operates, not that I'm an expert, but their MO around the world has been to go into a community and just start working and absorb some fines rather than sort of set up a relationship with local government. And to a large extent it has worked. Diego, let me ask you something. Glenna was sort of going in this direction. I think everybody I know, I was with a friend last night who told her horror story about taxis. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times where I have flown into Miami International. You get out, you get in a taxi on a hot day, the windows are down, you have to ask the driver to turn on the air conditioning, the cab is old and you know, a rust bucket. I really think that part of the success of Uber has been the failure of the taxi industry to provide better quality service.
It's possible that the expenses that the taxi cab industry has to go through with insurance and inspections and background checks and all that hampers somewhat their ability to have a better vehicle. However, you may not be aware that we have an ambassador program that's about to start and has already started.
What is that program?
The cab will have to be 3 years old to come in. It will have cameras. We already have charge cards in all the county cabs and apps in quite a few of them.
Yeah, but the taxi industry fought the swipe cards for a long time.
Not, would you say that some of the taxi cab drivers, not the taxi industry.
Right,
I promoted it for 4 years before I take the credit for getting it done.
Okay, well, congratulations.
But you know, this is simple mathematics. Look, you can't come into a town and not abide by certain laws that were put there for the last 100 years to protect the public. You know, that's where the issue comes in with Uber.
However, if I just can address your point there, the laws were written before at-base business ever existed. There was no such business when those laws were written.
Absolutely, but it is the government's job not to protect the business model, but to protect the public. And if anybody knew that the beginning of the app of Uber tells you that you have to wait torque, that you have to give them the right to sell your information, that you have to give them the right to sell your charge card information, you cannot sue them, and they have the right to judge you as a person. To me, that's discrimination, you know? I think that all the public has to be picked up. We don't like to have taxi cabs for certain areas because we couldn't serve them, so the county did something about it in Dade County. They have underserved cabs, and they have cabs that can't come south of Kendall. And that's to serve those areas, which may be the solution to some other areas that aren't being served properly. But that is the issue.
Look, if the taxi cab company and the cabs that are out there that you and I have both been in, we've all been in them, that have been hot and ripped up or smelled of whatever, if we can improve that because of this situation, I'm all for that.
Right.
But this is about free enterprise. This is about allowing for an entrepreneurial business to thrive and something consumers want. So we got to find a way to make sure that it exists.
And that's a great point that you make, Dan. And as a member of the chamber, I hope that you appreciate that with the model that we have, the ordinance that we have in Broward County, it really does not have barriers to entry. And so a couple of guys in their garage can create an app, can get a few friends that have a clean record and a few vehicles, and they can start their own ride-sharing company. You don't have to buy medallions. You don't have to have a lot of money. You can have 5 or 10 vehicles, and you can be operating. And so you start networking, say, over at Broward College or Miami-Dade College, and take off from there.
You know that's not going to happen.
I certainly hope that this will be the beginning of new millionaires in South Florida.
The dismantling of the system and business model of the taxi industry is what it sounds like.
Are you kidding? Google's just launched an app. They want to compete directly with them, and Chinese companies coming in and competing directly. This is not new. This is the beginning.
I get the feeling that there's going to be some resolution here, and Local 10 News will be there to follow it, and so will Glenna and I.
As I've said many times, we're ready to sit down with Uber and continue the discussion.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Dan Lindblade, Diego Feliciano, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. All right, still to come, that part of our show where we play without a safety net. We're talking about the round table. It's next.
The big news of the week included ride sharing and also a major ruling on your voting districts.
Those are a few of the topics we're going to take to our powerhouse roundtable. This morning, its members include the one and only Rosemary O'Hara, editorial page editor of the Sun Sentinel, frequent contributor to the roundtable. Great to have you back. And also great to welcome back H.T. Smith, a very well-known, well-respected Miami attorney, civil rights leader. And for his inaugural appearance on the roundtable, our friend David Adams, South Florida correspondent for Thomson Reuters, the worldwide news service. David is a former Latin American bureau chief for the St. Petersburg Times.
Welcome.
Good morning.
And everybody takes taxis and ride sharing here?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
All right, let's start there. Rosemary O'Hara, in your county?
Yes, yes.
The rules are about to change, and what do you think of Uber pulling out and Lyft pulling out if the companies do? How does that serve the public? Who loses?
The public loses, really. I mean, I think that the response to this decision has been overwhelming, and the commission needs to listen. People like this service. They feel safe in this service. The way the company regulates itself and its driver and the passenger, people want this service. Part of, I mean, I get the point of the taxi cab industry. A lot of our businesses have been interrupted by the internet. You know, the newspaper industry knows well. But, but the service they've provided, the taxi cabs, is more expensive. It's not always reliable. As you noted, the cars are not clean. Government regulation doesn't make me feel safer in a cab than it does in my Uber.
Right.
And I'm confident that this controversy is going to make both of them better. I think the commission is going to listen to the people. I and all of my family use Uber, and I think a few tweaks of this law will make it commercially competitive as well as commercially viable, and the people will get what they want and need.
Yeah.
And I think it's a more democratic system. I mean, journalists have had to live with the internet, right, which has totally transformed newspapers.
Yes.
I think the taxi industry needs to realize that the internet is affecting their business too. And the medallion system is a system that allows wealthy owners of medallions to sit at home while other people do the work for them.
Right, and are not all that well paid, and many of them in Miami-Dade are Haitian Americans, and they work very hard. Well, if we can, let's move on to, I think, a huge story this week. It's hard to emphasize how important it is, and HT, that was the Florida Supreme Court ruling on redistricting, in which essentially, I mean, you're the lawyer, you explained it, but the Supreme Court said to the legislature, you defied the will of the people, you drew these congressional districts to benefit Republicans. It was supposed to be a fair district, an unbiased process, and you've got to go back and repair it, especially beginning in 8 congressional districts, 3 of them in South Florida.
Yeah, well, this type of gerrymandering has been going on for a long time, and that's why the people of the state of Florida stepped forward and say, we want to try to stop this, and we're going to put some rules into play that will make it fairer. Now, let's be fair. Democrats, when they were in power, did the exact same thing.
Of course they did.
But fortunately for us, the Republicans left a lot of evidence around in terms of their emails, in terms of their notes and minutes and things like this. What I see, though, is a move toward taking the redistricting totally out of the hands of politicians. We see it in Colorado. We're going to see it here in the not too distant future. That's where it should be.
Isn't it just so egregious? It's not difficult. You don't have to be politically savvy to know that a compact and contiguous district kind of looks like a square. More squares next to more squares.
Not a salamander?
And if you look at the if you look at the redistricting map, there are districts that look like
Well,
this.
Corinne Brown's district from Jacksonville that winds down the state like a snake, or out of control Rorschach test. I mean, what they've done there, of course, Rosemary, is try to create a district that would allow an African American to be elected, and she's going to sue to try to stop this, I'm sure. But I mean, the fact is, her district, it just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. And you're right, Glenna. You know, what makes sense is for communities, the city of Jacksonville, to have the same congressperson. In Tampa, there's a little city outside of Tampa, Temple Terrace, has 3 different members of Congress in a small little town. So who do you go to? Who's your guy? Who's your gal? Also up there, across Tampa Bay, stacking of African Americans. Kathy Castor's district has Tampa with the Democratic parts, and then jumps across Tampa Bay into South St. Pete for the black voters over there. It is not, people voted for fair districts because they want a fix in our political system.
Right.
It's dysfunctional, and if we don't draw these districts so that they're so safe, we're never going to throw the bums out when people think that that's the answer.
No, I was about to say, though, if when these districts are redrawn in the next 100 days, if they do not comply with fair districts, I think that the court is going to appoint someone to do it. And that's the last thing the legislature wants.
Well, that's the question. The same people are going to be drawing the districts now that did before.
And that's the thing that struck me was so extraordinary, as HT said. It was done in such a blatant fashion. You would think that the politicians would realize that, especially after, I mean, it's illegal anyway, but then an ordinance was passed or a constitutional amendment was passed. You'd think that would be enough to stop them doing it, but they don't seem to get the message that that kind of thing has to stop. The other thing that surprised me was that the initial legal challenge was for a much smaller number of districts. The end result was actually even more districts turned out to be questionable, because those South Florida districts weren't originally in the mix.
Right. We should point out that Florida has 27 congressional districts, and 8 were ordered redrawn, but all the ones that touch them will be affected as well. And David, I don't know if you looked at it this closely, but it was explained to me this week that the city of Homestead, just as you describe how Kathy Castor's district takes in Tampa and St. Pete, the city of Homestead is actually represented by both Carlos Curbelo and Ileana Ross-Lehtinen. And it's not that they aren't capable members of Congress, but if you live on this street, you know, you have one member of Congress, you live on the other, you've got another. I mean, that just...
I didn't actually. Ileana is my representative in Key Biscayne. I had absolutely no idea that Homestead was part of my district. I've got no objection to that, but obviously it struck me as odd. Maybe if you drew a line across the water, you know, we'd come out quite near Homestead.
Well, there was, remember the district number, was it 25 or 26, where alligators outnumbered voters? It stretched across the Everglades.
That's right.
And it's, go ahead.
What's extraordinary is the Florida Supreme Court is going to be the school the principal.
Right.
You've got 100 days legislature to do this. We're going to be watching you. Right now, we're not going to do anything more, but they've got somebody who's going to be watching them closely. The lawmakers presumably can't go behind closed doors, delete their emails, have all of this manipulation going on in drawing lines. Right. So I say hooray for the Florida Supreme Court for standing up for the people, which is what the legislature is supposed to do.
I just hope the public don't get even more turned off by going out to vote, because now they're going to be confused. Well, who is my representative?
That's a great point.
And maybe hopefully they'll say, oh, I need to find out.
And I want the public. I want the public to know too, because a lot of people are saying, well, why don't they take it away from them? We have separation of powers, and the courts want the legislature to do it and do it right. Deference to that branch of government, but they have one more shot, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, they will have it within 100 days. And then give the plan to the court. If the court doesn't like, as you pointed out, the Supreme Court sent it back to the trial court, but retained jurisdiction. So the Supreme Court is still the big player in this drama. All right, we have to take a little break here for the roundtable, and we'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back on this Sunday morning, live in our studio. What a lineup of roundtable guests. We have Rosemary O'Hara from the Sun Sentinel, H.T. Smith, outstanding lawyer, and David Adams, an outstanding reporter. David, you went to South Carolina. I don't know if you went for the church services of the 9
Some of them.
People who were murdered there in the church, but I mean, the big news this week was that the legislature, at the urging of the governor, brought down the Confederate flag on the Capitol grounds. Tell us what you saw and experienced.
Well, I have to say, in the nearly 30 years I've been a reporter, it's one of the most astonishing and moving stories that I've ever had to cover. Both the funerals, President Obama's speech at Reverend Pinckney's funeral, and then watching, as I did, the entire 13 hours of debate in the South Carolina legislature on Wednesday, which finished at 1:14 a.m., which, as the day progressed, grew more and more interesting. It began as a very civilized and civil debate, with the speaker allowing everybody to have their 20 minutes. And gradually, as frustration or impatience grew and frustrations grew, and the people who wanted to bring the flag down, both Democrats and Republicans, led by the governor, the Republican Nikki Haley, they began to get very upset, and you could see it. And it famously came to the moment when the Republican female member from Charleston broke down and turned the table, really, in the debate. I think she shamed everybody, and from that moment on, the flag was coming down. They came within 3 votes of stopping the motion.
I didn't
from
know
being
it was that
approved.
close.
Yeah.
3 votes for they were going to vote for a referendum, and it came up 3 votes short. That would have delayed the whole process by a year and a half or so.
You know, I happened to be on your show right after this occurred, and if you remember, I said this has the potential of providing a magical, memorable moment for racial reconciliation, but none of us thought it would be a symbol this great and happening this fast. Hank Aaron said, the great Hank Aaron said, when you have an opportunity for a great to do something great, you need 2 things. 1, to be prepared for the moment, and 2, the courage to take your best swing. Nikki Haley and the mayor of Charleston and that legislature were prepared for the moment, and they had the courage to take their best swing, and they lifted all of us to a moral high level.
Well said.
So is this the beginning of something else or the end in South Carolina?
Well, it's an end and a beginning. It's an end of what this flag stood for. I think right now it's where it should be, but it's also a
historical artifact.
It's a historical artifact, and that's where it should be in our history. But I think it's a beginning of a higher level of tone in terms of us trying to make America a more perfect union. People are feeling a lot more comfortable about talking about race, the most difficult discussion in our country, discussing America's original sin.
You could really see it changing people's hearts and minds. Governor Haley was not considered to have a good relationship with the African American community in South Carolina. She really does now, which is an astonishing achievement for a Republican governor. And you could see in the funerals, she attended every single one of the funerals, all 9. And she was visibly moved at all of them, spoke very well at most of them, without scripted speeches. Everything she did was unscripted and clearly very genuine. And I think she's a political force to be reckoned with, maybe beyond South Carolina politics.
Yeah, Rosemary, in fact, I didn't know much about Nikki Haley until the tragedy in Charleston and then the Confederate flag controversy coming to an end. But I've got to say, she was tremendously impressive. I mean, speaking without notes at these funerals, what she said when she signed the bill to bring down the flag.
Signed it with 9 pens.
Yeah. And then it shows you the power of the bully pulpit, the power of a governor who speaks from her heart, the power of a governor who can stand up and say, You know, this is the end of the day and a new day forward. And I would just add, you know, the contrast between her and our own governor, who has such a hard time talking about the flag. I don't think he has talked about the flag, or he wants to talk about one thing in jobs, and yet when you're in government and you're the leader of a
Got
state,
to talk about the whole spectrum
Exactly.
of life before you in your state.
One more anecdote, which it got squeezed out of all of our stories, and I so much wanted to put it in one of mine, and I didn't see it mentioned in other stories too. At one of the funerals, Nikki Haley mentioned that she was her office is 2 hours away in Columbia, yeah? So she was driving back and forward for all of these funerals. Some of them were a couple of each day. She said that every day when she drove home, she took the order of service for each of the victims, and she showed it to her children, and explained to her children who the person was who had died. And I thought that was very nice, that, and really convinced me that she took this to heart, that she was prepared to go and explain to her children who these people were. And they, as we all know, they were all very remarkable people in their own individual
What
ways.
it's about. It's about a person.
Yeah, I really like when she talked about Cynthia Hurd and how it touched her for Cynthia Hurd's main statement to be, I want to be nicer than necessary.
Yeah.
What a great way to live.
Can I just bring up, while we're on the subject of Florida, the Confederate flag is in the seal of the state of Florida.
Well, that's a big debate as to whether it is or whether it's not. That flag came about.
Seal. It's
I understand,
there. Yeah.
and I'm on the side that it is, because it came about when Francis Fleming was the governor of the state of Florida, a member of the Ku Klux Klan who fought in the Confederacy and who took away the judgeship for the only black judge who existed at that time, a guy by the name of James Dean down in Key West. He had a lawyer frame him by saying that he married a white man and a black woman. Well, the so-called white man signed an affidavit, said, I'm not white. Now, back in 1890s and 1900, a lot of blacks were trying to pass for white, but wasn't no white people trying to pass for black. He still took his judgeship away. That's when the flag came about. I am confident it was because of the Confederacy.
You know, one other small point, if I could, this is pretty obscure. In Statuary Hall in the Capitol, every state has a statue of two of its best citizens. Florida, one of them is Edmund Kirby Smith, who was a career U.S. Army officer who then became a general in the Confederate Army and served throughout the war. After the Battle of Vicksburg, he was a very important figure, and he is representing Florida in the Capitol.
You know, Statuary Hall is filled with old, mostly white guys. You know, they don't. That is not a place that I go and I feel like, wow, there's my role model. Yeah. So yeah, sure. Let's take a look. I mean, tradition has a place, and it helps us know where we come from. Right. And I do think, in addition to the statues, we've seen reaction to the names of counties, Lee County, Jackson County, you know, so that conversation will continue.
Yeah, but this conversation, and look what we're doing, I think you're right, HT. The conversation is happening in many places, and I think that's healthy. Well, we are out of time. David, great to have you come in. HT.
No, it was just getting good.
Oh, that day is made.
Stick
right
around.
there, no matter what else happens.
All right, up next, residents of Miami's Overtown neighborhood have been pressing their demand for jobs at the Miami World Center project. We will tell you about it next. There was some protests in Miami this week that focused on a major construction project that has made big promises to the residents of Overtown, which, as you know, is one of Miami's poorest neighborhoods.
And now those residents are demanding the promise become a reality. Local 10's Janine Stanwood was there.
Protesters swarmed the Stephen P. Clark Government Center, some wearing black T-shirts reading, "Black Work Matters." They posted their rallying cries on social media. At one point, it was a battle with security. Among their demands, guaranteed jobs at the Miami World Center, a gleaming, glitzy mega development to be built on the edge of Overtown that has had support from politicians.
When I look at what have happened to my community over my 34 years of living, it's really disgusting.
But in an email to Local 10, the developer says it does promise to hire locally, about 18,000 jobs in return for tax breaks. These protesters, though, who stuck around for more than 2 hours, worry that's just talk.
We have been sitting down with the developer for about a month and a half. He's given us a runaround.
You can invite people to apply for a job. Giving them the jobs is a completely different thing.
We want to see the Miami World Center move forward, but we also want to see overtime, to make sure that overtime is taken care of.
Our thanks to Janine Stanwood for that report. Those protests started and ended peacefully. Construction on the Miami World Center is expected to begin in the fall.
And still to come, my personal perspective about that state Supreme Court ruling telling the legislature to go back and get it right on redistricting.
Hey there, South Florida. Good afternoon. It's mostly sunny skies. Taking a live look out of Fort Lauderdale. So if you're along the East Coast areas, you're seeing plenty of sunshine. If you're closer to the inland areas, a little cloudier than that, but you can see temperatures are warming up fast. Pembroke Pines already hitting 92 degrees at this hour. Highs will be in the low 90s for today, feeling close to the triple digits on the radar. Pretty quiet out there, except for a few spotty showers over the lower Keys. But most of these showers will only bring a light sprinkle or two. But this afternoon across Broward and Miami-Dade, mostly dry conditions other than an isolated thunderstorm on the western side. But again, we're staying in that quiet weather pattern. However, that's expected to actually change as we head into the new week. For Monday, Tuesday, the winds will start coming out of the southwest. Hopefully, we can get some rain returning to our areas because we really need it. Rain chances will go up as high as 40%. Michael?
Jennifer, thank you. All right, before we leave you this morning, a personal perspective about the Florida Supreme Court decision on redistricting. Now, hold on. See your eyes starting to glaze over, but stick with me here. This decision is so important. It says the state legislature ignored the will of the people. Indeed, it made a mockery of the people's desire to have fairly drawn congressional districts. You'll remember back in 2010, voters by a wide margin approved the Fair Districts Amendment to the state constitution. It called on lawmakers to draw fair, unbiased legislative and congressional districts, but they didn't. They drew districts to benefit Republicans. The state high court, in no uncertain terms, said you screwed up and you got 100 days to do it again and get it right. This is not and shouldn't be a partisan issue. Democrats gerrymandered when they were in control in Tallahassee, and now that Republicans are in charge, they gerrymandered these congressional and legislative district lines. But that's exactly what the Fair Districts Amendment told them not to do. Thankfully now, the state Supreme Court stood up for the rights of the people. So what does this mean to you? Well, when you go to vote next year, you may find that your current member of Congress isn't on your ballot. There will be new names and a good chance now for Democrats to win 1 or 2 seats in the U.S. House in Florida. You'll also find that you live in a district that makes more sense, is more compact, contiguous, doesn't split up cities. Hooray for that. And hooray for the 5 justices of the Florida Supreme Court who made this ruling. They have righted a wrong. The only problem now is the people who did that wrong are the very ones who are supposed to correct it. The court will be keeping a close eye on them. So will we. That's my perspective for this week. Hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved.
And we'd love to know what you think. Please do weigh in on any topic at all. Email, Facebook, Twitter, any of these addresses. We are very easy to find. And thanks so much for those of you who are right during this show.
And we'll see you next week.
Have a great Sunday.